Okay. Hello and welcome back. 2022. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to Work in Progress. This is a show where I have conversations with interesting people about something they're working on personally or creatively. And the hope is that we can learn from each other and grow together. So who am I? Abdullah Adekola, he, him. I'm a black British working class writer and performer. I'm the co-founder of Say It With Your Chest, which is a black-led poetry and creative platform based in Leeds. And you can follow us on Instagram at SIWYCHEST. And our breakthrough collection of poetry, Nigrescence, is out right now on adekola.bigcartel.com. That's my website. And you can follow me on Instagram at Adekola Poetry. If you're listening to this, you may know that the Work in Progress podcast has an Instagram page also. So just do check that out. It's just Work in Prog Pod. Okay. So our first guest of 2022 is Kamil Mahmood, a poet, spoken word and visual artist born and raised in Birmingham. His work explores identity, community, Islam, the British Pakistani diaspora, masculinity and power dynamics. And his debut collection, Mute Men, was published by Verve Poetry Press in 2019. He's co-founder of Gully Collective, a space connecting and supporting South Asian creatives. He was shortlisted for the Oxford Brookes International Poetry Prize in 2021. Kamil, thanks for joining us. How are you doing? Yeah, good. I'm glad we're able to make this happen. You've been trying to do this for a while. But yeah, we're here now, and it's happening when it's supposed to happen. And yeah, you're our first guest of 2022. And yeah, how you been today? What you been up to today?
I went to the gym. I came home. My nephew is around, so we were babysitting him for a little bit, and did a little bit of reading. And I'm here now. So I'm currently on sabbatical actually. So I work as a dentist most of the time, but I took a break for a few months before I start my next job, because I want to kind of focus on sort of just relaxing a little bit, writing, reading, going to as many events as I could, sort of developing the kind of creative side of the stuff that I do, which is a bit difficult to do, I think, when you're kind of multitasking it with sort of a career which isn't necessarily artistic. I mean, dentistry is kind of artistic, but it's not it's very different, I guess, to being a poet or being a creative, being an artist.
I hear that.
He's
that's dope.
I think he's about 19 months. Yeah.
Like, oh wow, amazing. And what did you read?
I'm reading a collection by Safia El-Hilou, The January Children. Have you heard of her? Oh, so she's a Sudanese poet. I think she's from America or Canada. I'm not sure where specifically in Northern America. But there's a lot of kind of that I kind of relate to in reading her stuff. And even when I started writing, I sort of, I guess before doing page poetry, it was spoken word that kind of drew my attention. So there was a lot of spoken word artists, especially American spoken word artists, that I used to sort of go down the YouTube, what's it called? Rabbit tunnel? Is that what they call it? The rabbit hole. And Safia El-Hilou was, I think, one of the early poets that I used to kind of watch at like 3 a.m. in between revising.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Okay, yeah. I'm going to talk a bit more about dentistry, creativity, being on sabbatical, etc. So yeah, well, it's a really productive day, so shout out to you. I think for me, I study Arabic on, so I had an online class. I would have liked to have done. I had a busy week. I would have liked to have done a bit more homework. But my resolution for the next one is to, maybe tomorrow evening or whatever, make sure I get my homework on, so maximize it. But yeah, I enjoy learning as well and that kind of thing. And so, so that's dope. First of all, mashallah, dope. You're a dentist, obviously, that's that's obviously a very prestigious job, respectable job, difficult job, obviously, and then you're being creative as well. So in terms of how are you finding it, how are you managing it in terms of, balancing, because it is something that obviously you physically have to be present for. You can't really work from home as a dentist. And obviously all the time that you studied in it, it's, I think, yes, so talk to me about that, just balancing dentistry with creativity, and then also in terms of, and then just wider about just work. And I don't know about you, but obviously I moved to this country as a kid, so our parents really, they came to these country. My parents came to this country more for like economic reasons, to study and and that kind of thing. So the average person wanting to pursue creativity, they're not guaranteed of any kind of financial, the most people financially kind of being viable. But talk about balancing dentistry, creativity, and then also like just your relationship with work and creativity, really.
I see sort of my identity as a dentist and identity as a creative as very kind of I guess I compartmentalize it. And I was even thinking the other day of like why I do that, and what would it look like if I use dentistry to kind of inform my writing, because I've also sort of been flirting with the idea of maybe even like writing a play, or I had like this idea of maybe like having a play which revolves around like a dentist and sort of the dialogue a dentist has with its patients, and like even it being kind of a comedic, especially where I was working for the last 2 years in Handsworth in Birmingham. So it was a very like multicultural, very diverse, a lot of patients who didn't speak English, so kind of managing that as well. And I feel like the best art sort of just reflects life, and like sometimes life, you come across people, and just in general conversations, they'll have like a natural sort of poeticness to sort of just the way they speak or the way they tell stories. I'm a really big fan of like how poetry tells stories. So, and when I'm talking to people and they're telling me their stories, that I guess it's the storyteller in me that makes me think, okay, well, what can we do beyond sort of the page and beyond spoken word and beyond even music and like, being in a space. I don't know, I quite like the idea of theatre. I've got a few friends who are sort of in theatre. I went to a play yesterday, actually. It was a one-woman show by a friend of mine called Rupinder Kaur. She's a poet based around Birmingham. She's from Wolverhampton. But it was the first one-person show that I've been to, and it was interesting. It's not what I'm kind of used to, but I've been trying to be going to kind of more and more theatre and just kind of get an eye for it. I also was kind of thinking of an idea of, because I'm interested also in the stories that, and I guess that kind of, you see this in my book, like the stories that men tell, and sort of like just, I had an idea for maybe a play where it's just a conversation between three, like, Muslim men, like even in like a shisha lounge, and just like the day-to-day conversations they have, and then sort of the internal monologues that can also happen, because I also feel sometimes when you're in group settings there is this sort of internal monologue happening and can be very different to the external monologue, and kind of playing with sort of the inner voice, the inner child, and how that kind of would weave into sometimes concordant external behavior and sometimes the opposite. I find that quite interesting. So those are kind of some ideas I had in my head. But in terms of like balancing dentistry, at the moment, I probably am not the best person at balancing both. That's probably why I took the sabbatical, because I tried for a while to do both. And with dentistry, it's quite a demanding job in terms of just time. Like you're waking up early, you're there most of the day, and it is a very tiring job. Like it's very, very talkative. And me, I can talk if I need to, but it gets to a point where I just don't want to talk. I want to listen, but you have to, like as a dentist, like, that's what the patient wants. Like the patient a lot of patients will come to you and they don't necessarily want to be in the dental chair. And there's always this sort of guard up that they have with the dentist, because there's sort of this invasion, I guess, of their personal space. You know, it's one of the most intimate things you can do, like go into someone's mouth and like rummage around, and then on top of that, sort of adding the layer of someone being in pain, or there being infection, or there being childhood phobias, or there being like a myriad of external issues that can also affect your mental health and just like how you're functioning on a psychological level. Like, for example, in Handsworth, we had a lot of like refugee populations, and a lot of them didn't speak English, mostly Kurdish. There's a kind of it's a nice little community around. There's a lot of Kurdish shops, so it kind of caters to the community that's there. And you know, you could see it in patients. You could see that there's like this level of sort of trauma happening in the back, which can kind of inform how they behave in that dental setting. And on one hand, you know, there is a degree of, you know, you as an authority figure also, you know, there's very much this nature of, I'll just go with what you want to go, like you make the decisions. But with dentistry, you know, consent's a very interesting thing, because we can't do anything without the consent of the patient. But we sometimes, you know, individuals might come to us having sort of a cultural understanding of what the role of sort of a healthcare professional plays in a community, maybe in Kurdistan or maybe in India, where it's more like, oh, you know what you're talking about, so you make the decision for me. But it's I find like how important even things like translation are, and how much meaning can be lost. And I sort of ponder those sort of stuff when I'm thinking about like writing, when I'm thinking about how can I say what I want to say in the way that I want it to say, and are there different ways of saying it, and what are those different ways, and what do they mean, and how does it change what the art is that you're trying to put out there, and what are the limitations of language as well, because is there a better way? And yeah, in terms of balancing, sorry, I feel like I've gone on a tangent there because I'm just thinking about work now. Balancing it, I would try and go to as many events as I could outside of my hours. So, and Birmingham's quite a cool scene in terms of there's quite a few good local spaces that people are doing work from. There's not a huge amount of space, so it means that the spaces that you tend to go to, they tend to have a lot going on, because people are, and I have to kind of thank the people who run those spaces, because a lot of those spaces actually will not charge you, because they're just like, hey, we want you to use this space, we want you to be doing these arts events, we want you to be bringing people from the community into our space. Because like, let's say, for example, things like a coffee shop. For example, we've got an event on Friday with Gully, it's our first live event with Gully, and it's at the Hive in Moseley, and you know, we're not paying anything for the gig itself, and it's a really nice space. And the people running it, they kind of very much believe in the community, even though like Moseley itself is pretty white, middle class community. It's surrounded by sort of very multicultural areas. So it's sort of, because it's a bit of a central location, there's a bus that goes straight to town there. There's loads of shops there. There's a few supermarkets there. You get people from like neighboring areas sort of coming in and like going to the coffee shops and that kind of stuff. So, you know, they want that area to be used. You know, it's like there's nothing worse than like an empty space, because what's the point? So yeah, like forming those links with people that run these spaces, and finding out if they've got sort of the correct ethos, and if they know how to work with artists, because artists I think are a bit difficult to work with. Not in a difficult, difficult sounds negative, but I think there's an art to working with artists. And you can kind of tell how comfortable a space is based on sort of the ethos of the people that are running those spaces. So I find also one thing that really helps with my art and the balance is surrounding yourself and have friends who are within that scene, so that, you know, when you're also like chilling, relaxing, you're also having these conversations about poetry, you're also having these conversations about these themes, and you're also approaching it without with a degree of vulnerability, which I think I have quite a few friends who aren't from the poetry scene or from the creative scene, and you know, we do have deep conversations, but there is always this barrier of vulnerability. Whereas I find with a lot of poets, they've almost gotten over that barrier, because it's just like, oh, you know what, like, what's the point in the barrier? Like, and yeah, make it so that your art doesn't kind of feel like a chore. I mean, I enjoy it, so I've never seen, if anything, I would see the dentistry as a chore. And then any time outside of that, I would see it as me relaxing or me enjoying and doing the stuff that I do. So people would ask me, oh, how are you doing all this stuff? And like, how are you able to balance it? And I'm like, it's not really a balance. If anything, I'm doing this art stuff to recover from the, like, dentistry in a way.
Wow. I totally get you. I think I do anyway. Yeah. I hear that. No, you know what? If I was your patient, I'd feel very at ease, because you have first of all, you have a good voice. I don't know if anyone's told you, but you need to be recording audiobooks, and you have it's a little bit professorial, but also it has some bit, you know, allow me to just compliment you a bit. It sounds empathetic, and also it's So you've got a good, you've got.
Oh, thank you. No one's ever told me that.
Future there, so that's good. yeah, definitely. Oh, there you go. But listen, that play, or that about the dentist, especially that the place you're working, I can already see it. It has like a phone shop, or
phone shop.
I don't know if you ever saw that show. It has that kind of vibe. Like, I can even the Barbershop Chronicles that I've not seen, but I think I know what might go on there. There's something there, because obviously, you know, people have such visceral reactions to dentistry, in terms of, like, some people, you know, like grown adults super scared of it. For a long time, people thought it was a scam. Like, there's not, you know, like, it's not a thing that's worth whatever. So yeah, no, there is something there, 100%. There's something there, and also the fact that, you know, it's, you know, if I'm thinking of a show like a sitcom, it's the fact that you know that you can bring in new characters every you can have like a core group of people, but new characters every day. So there definitely is something there in terms of in that regard. And I don't know that I've seen. Obviously, there's 1,000 medical shows in whether sitcom or drama, but I don't know that there's too many dentistry shows, and definitely probably not from the angle you're coming from. So yeah, definitely pursue that, and yeah. Oh man, I've got so much to say. So a little bit. So I actually work for a mental health charity at the moment, I work for a mental health charity. I've worked and also a little bit in adult social care. So in terms of doing those kind of jobs, I empathize, and I think I understand where you're coming from in terms of just in terms of working in those things that can be quite demanding. Mental health charity stuff, that's relatively recent. It's just been since August 2020 that I started doing that. That's been good, because it's kind of like something new to me, and I get to use some of the skills that I've built up when I've been facilitating workshops, when I've been having these conversations. So there is actually, for me in that regard, it's actually quite good. There's a closer link, I would say, to poetry and creativity and that mental health stuff, because it's more of like, it's a lot of like it's around peer support, so it's kind of like a lot of talking and relating and empathizing, which I guess you have to have a kind of innate interest in, but it's very similar to similar things come up in my writing and creativity. Obviously, it's by factors more when you're writing, especially for yourself and in your own direction. But there's something there. And then for me as well, like, you know, you've written a poetry collection.
I need to get your poetry collection, actually. Who's it published by?
Regressons, like I mentioned. Oh, yeah. No,
I love Burning Eye, yeah.
Burning Eye. They're based in Bristol. But I think they work a lot in the Birmingham area, though. I think they've got...
Were they recently...
They've got good links with a lot of...
Were they recently
people.
doing like a thing where they were online... it was like a sale, and there was loads of books that was on that sale. Because I'm sure there was. Is Burning Eye also
really?
Vanessa Kasula is? Yeah, it's Bristol, isn't it? She's based in Bristol. Yeah, I think it is. So I was going to go and buy like 10 books, including yours. And then I was like,
oh wow!
I have a habit right now of just buying books and just never being able to read them. It's almost like a hoarding thing.
Yeah.
So I was gonna buy the book, and then because it was 10 books I was just like, nope, stop myself. So I'm gonna get it.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. Appreciate that. But for me, I'm gonna do as well. I'm gonna record this as an audiobook at some point. Yeah, because I think. This is part of where I was going as well. Like, yeah, so we've both written a collection of poetry, and that's cool. I mean, there's no guarantee that not most poets haven't written a collection of poetry. I feel like everybody's got a story inside them. Everyone should have a chance to write either a cookbook, their memoirs, whatever. But anyway, and there's no, this might be the only collection that I ever write. Somehow I don't think it will be, but it might be. And it's like, and I think, the writing's never finished. It's just abandoned. It's just paused, and you have a deadline, etc. But what I've been excited to do with this is that I've turned a few poems in here into like a video piece, where I worked with the Tetley, which is a Leeds-based organisation and building, arts organisation and building. I've turned that into a poem, and it's breathed a new life into it. And then another one that I've done, I've worked with the New Creatives North, and it's like a thing where it's like BBC Arts and the Arts Council and New Creatives North. Like, you can make a piece of audio work. So I've made a piece of audio work, and that was like a audio. It's like a song, a poem. It's got like soundscapes, and it really sets a picture and sets a scene.
Oh wow!
God willing, that's going to be out this year. And then what I'll do when that's out, I'm going to then turn that into a film again. So then it'll be like, so it's gone through, so it started off as words on a page. It's made it's turned into a digital, it turns into an audio piece where there's different characters, different voices. It's set in a bit in Nigeria, set a bit in Saudi Arabia, set a bit in Leeds, and this and that. And different experiences of my life. It's kind of like my life story so far, kind of thing. That's the kind of vibe of that poem. And then I'm gonna then film that, and then it'll be, maybe I'll have like a little monologue before it, or I'm excited to. I'm not allowed to do anything. I'm not allowed to do anything with that until it comes out on like BBC Sounds or wherever it's gonna come out. So, but once it does, then I can kind of then use it for another piece of artwork. So yeah, and I'm just excited, and then I want to get into script writing. I've got into a few writing programs this year, so I'm excited to develop that, because for me, I feel like like it really was I made a conscious decision to like, okay, you know what, I need to do more things I enjoy. I need to and that's when I got into poetry and writing or whatever. And it's still, I'm still enjoying it, still having a overall massively positive impact on my life, meeting so many cool people, being in so many cool spaces, and through it, and I owe it to myself to kind of continue developing, and kind of now that I've given myself permission to put pen to paper and present it to people, what else can I do? Maybe I can write a script, maybe I can whatever, maybe I can find some kind of medium where it's like an art, like a journal, like a diary entry journal, but also has some social commentary, or then also it's creative in some way. Who knows? But yeah, it's exciting because it's like,
how did you find that process of
just
writing
really,
your book, your first book?
So this one, I think, how many, there's 30 in this one, and I think the good message that I've got is that it's a bit true. There's 30 pieces in this one. The good message I've got is that it's a little bit short, on the short side, but I've always kind of, rather too short than too long. That's something I've always kind of thought. Overall, it was quite a smooth process, because, around 2019, I saw that I've been writing. I think the first time I got on stage was late 2015, early 2016. And then the first time I actually got paid to perform was 28, a serious amount of money was maybe 2018. And it was never, of course, it was never about the money, whenever.
Yeah,
but
encourages
you just get these nice little boosters, confidence boosters, exactly. So So yeah, and then it was later on, maybe around 2019, I thought, oh, I think I'm gonna write because I love to read, and I've always loved to read. I love to read, and I was like, okay, maybe I'm gonna write a collection one day, and it happened maybe a bit sooner than maybe a bit sooner than you would expect, or a bit sooner than it, or whatever. But the main thing that happened was I saw that there was but once I get into something, I get into it. So I was already kind of figured out, okay, who are publishing people and whatever. And then I saw that Burning Eye had an open, they had like an open call where, okay, we have a submission window, send something. So I sent something, and they came back and like, okay, yeah, there's something here. You have a few more things to work on, but there's something here. And then around, like I said, 2019, they let me know that, oh yeah, okay, we're gonna consider you for 2021 or something like that. And then I got to work. I already had a good batch. I'd probably say I had like half the poems already written by that point. And then or maybe, yeah, I'd say between half and three quarters. I think I probably had half the poems that ended up in here already written at that point. But then we have a deadline, you have a focus. I was like, okay, and then I just kept thinking, and then working with them in terms of I'm very precious about I'm quite a sensitive person anyway, but most artists are quite sensitive. But I just thought to myself, you know what, these people believe in me in terms of wanting me to write the thing. I should also give them some benefit of that, because they've read loads of poetry. They've published a lot of people who I know about and respect. And so it was very easy for me in terms of just anything we thought we'd like, okay, this, you need to expand on this. This is not clear. What did you mean? And then this poem is too much like this poem. You got to drop it. And I didn't have any. I would and there's nothing that I don't think there's anything that I'm like left out that I thought, or I was right, they were wrong, I should have kept that in. Or if someone who kind of knows what they're talking about, if they're saying that doesn't really quite hit, then it's like, okay, can you do something about it? If not, then maybe maybe you need to drop the whole thing, and the idea wasn't that strong. And then they also had some, okay, you need to add, this is a really good one, add more, and then even things like how it's laid out on the page, in terms of like do that. So it was a nice, it was a pleasant experience really. And, I took it quite seriously, you see, so, cause I've kind of from a young age, I've always kind of knew that I'd write something. So it felt like, okay, this is like, if this is my first introduction to the world, let me kind of let me really think about but then a lot of the poems, they're only like 4 or 5 lines, so like half of them are about that length, some of them are like more deeper, I travel, and then the best thing about it as well that I'm happy about was that because this is I spotted this after reading Suhaima Manzoor Khan's post-colonial banter, and I saw that she had notes, and I didn't even know that was a possibility. And I asked, "Oh, could I put notes in?" And they were like, "Yeah." And then that just made it that made me happy, because then I could like let the poems stand on their own. But for people who wanted to kind of kind of understand the context of the poems I was writing, they could look at the notes. And these are some of the notes that I've written in the back, and like. And the themes of it are all on like kind of, the theme. The book is called Negrescence. Negrescence is the process of developing a racial identity, especially a black racial identity. And so it's about, blackness. It's about my personal experiences. It's about hope. There's a lot of hope, optimism in there. There's a lot of self-reflection, accountability. There's stuff about being a man. So it's all that good stuff. But yeah, it's been a fun experience, and that's it really. And I'm excited to kind of like I said, I just feel like I'm just getting started in some ways. So yeah, it's been a pleasant experience really.
I feel like I feel like when I was asked to do it, it did seem a little bit early, but I was very flattered because other people that I knew who I kind of really respected had been published by Verve, and then I was approached because I think I was recommended. But even then, it did seem very early. It did, and I'd been reading page poetry, but I wouldn't have described myself as a page poet. But it was almost like when someone gives you this opportunity, you're just like, oh, okay, like it's almost like you think, oh, this opportunity is not going to happen, like, or this is, when just stuff happens in your life and you just think, oh, is this like something that I'm meant to be doing? Like, is this part of like my bigger destiny, or is this just like a blip or like a very minor thing? And I remember when that happened, I remember just thinking, oh, like this could be like this something I need to do. But I look back in hindsight and I just wonder whether I was maybe a bit too early in sort of like my development. Because I mean, I'm happy with the book, but I think it's like with any time anyone writes books, or any poet that I've spoken to, they've always said that their first book like is drastically different to like their second or their third or their fourth book. I think in the moment I thought, oh, okay, like I didn't really see myself writing a book at that point. Or I would have imagined if I was going to write a book, it would have been when I was, quote unquote, established, or when I was like 40 or 50, because I feel like most of like the books that, we kind of have read, or the books that we sort of associate with success, which is basically like dead white poets, a lot of them, wrote their books in their 40s and their 50s, and up until then were kind of relatively unknown. But I feel like, in this generation, there's sort of been this, probably because there's been the rise of these sort of indie presses, like Verve. I mean, I don't know if I would describe Verve as an indie press, but I feel like Burning Eye, it does kind of give me that, and they are actively looking for
independent press.
They're actively looking for sort of poets of colour, poets from working class backgrounds, so that's what kind of differs it. And then I remember when I was writing it, I did, do the thing where I took old poems and I was just like, especially because, the old poems were kind of spoken word poems, and, I don't know, you take a spoken word poem, or, a poem that is meant to be a spoken word poem, and then you put it in a book and it's just sort of not the same, it's not. So you have to kind of work with it. And a lot of the time I did take old spoken word pieces and then try and change them into something that could be on the page. And then in a lot of them, it would be a case of like literally gutting the piece and find out, okay, what is it that I'm actually trying to say with this piece? And if I had to say everything in this piece in, say, 4 or 5 lines, what would be those 4 or 5 lines? And I think prior to that sort of transformation in, or like that understanding of, you can say the same thing with saying less words. That's what kind of made me sort of see page poetry kind of like a riddle. Like it's kind of, you're tweaking it and you're moving stuff and you're taking stuff out and you're just like, oh, is it the same if I take this out? Or does it need something? Does this image need something in between it? And it almost becomes like you are, you're seeing sort of the essence of your poem or your spoken word piece, or not even just that, like the lesson or the story or the moment that you're trying to capture, or the emotion you're trying to capture, or the memory you're trying to capture, and you're working out, how can I say this in a way that is relatively succinct? Because when you come across poems where it's just like, it doesn't need that, like you can edit that out. It doesn't need X, Y, and Z. It's the same without. If anything, X, Y, and Z are actually creating noise, they're creating traffic, and that's fine too. Sometimes if that is intentional, but sometimes I'd notice stuff that was unintentional, and I just started reading like more and more poets, and I'm self-taught. I've never learned, like, apart from like my GCSE English, like I haven't gone and done like a writing course, and I wonder if that would have changed how I see poetry, and because I love spoken word, I love performance poetry, I love going to open mics and seeing that, I love going to events, theatres, and seeing like spoken word. But then there's also like an aspect of poetry that I really enjoy now, and I feel like the best spoken word and the best page poets the ones that I like love reading and love seeing performance, like they can do both. They can do both fairly well. And I think for me, that's what I want to kind of develop. I mean, especially because now I think I took a bit of a back step from spoken word and just started focusing on page poetry. But I think during this period, I want to kind of work on doing both. You know, doing pieces that can work as spoken word, but also work on the page.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I'm going to try and remember some of the salient points he made and go through them bit by bit. The first one is, one thing I'll say is just about confidence and having a go. You can't get to your third or fourth book if you don't do your first book. That's the first thing. You know, we can go into, like, you know, you mentioned about the most revered are dead white, etc. But yeah, I think I believe everybody has. It's not an original phrase to me. I heard it somewhere, but everyone has a struggle and a story. Talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. Those are some mantras. Those are some principles that I think believe in. I think talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. And I think everyone, even twins born in this same genetics, same household, I think everyone has a story that's unique and it's worth telling. So that's the premise and basis that I start from. And then for me, I would rather 10,000 more mediocre black and brown or working class people telling their story, because guess what? For 600 years, it's just been all white people telling their story, and then the good and the talented of those, or quote unquote, they come out. So there's no issue. I use another analogy is that love songs. Love songs have been written since the beginning of time, and they'll be written till the end of time. No one can ever say to someone else, mate, listen, I don't think you should write your love song because, you know, there's already this one. Don't do your love play. There's already Romeo and Juliet. Exactly. So everyone's is going to be slightly different tweaks, slightly different. And if for them, if they feel like they need to tell it, then they need to tell it. And if one person resonates, one person listens, then that's great. And if no one, then it was still needed. And the person who felt they needed to write it still needed to write it, and it deserves to exist in the world. So obviously, so you know, black or brown mediocrity is, and you know, having quote unquote having opportunities too early or whatever, that's fine. White people have been getting that.
I have no issue with black and brown mediocrity.
Yeah. No. I didn't think you said that. I didn't think you said. I'm just setting that out. I'm just saying that for the benefit of people, listeners, and to go into for the wider point, and then. But I'll let you come in. So, and then for me, yes, but I think the journey, just like you, it sounds to me from what I'm getting is that the journey of you feeling like you have to write this poem and whatever, let you then focus your attention to like, okay, damn, like, what is a good page poet? What is good page poetry, and how can I get close to that, and how can I move between those? And so it was an important part of your creative development journey. And then for me, same. I mean, like, look, now I'm kind of, if I never got on stage and that time, I wouldn't be sat here with you today talking. Do you know what I mean? All those things had to have happened that why we're here today. So yeah, so that's the first thing I'd say. I'd say to everyone, just if you think, even people say, I couldn't, you know, I meet people who they've got degrees in English literature and they're envious and in awe of like how I can be confident enough to, or you know, get on stage and write my poetry and whatever. And so I think there's some element of being self-taught, some element of coming at it for different reasons, kind of, you know, doesn't inhibits you, because sometimes when you know, I do believe like you need to know the rules before you break them. You need to know the rules before you break them. But more than anything, you need to really like. You need to try it out. You know what I'm saying? You need to try it out. So I think all of those things are important. And then I think, like with anything, you might know about the 10,000 hours principle, but you have I can tell you have high tastes, but once you start your craft, your taste level and your skill level is not going to be, Jimmy, there's going to be a massive gap between your taste level and your skill level. For me right now, there is even, But one thing about my poems is that I put some out on how I knew that they were worth putting on the page was that some of them I had performed dozens and dozens of times in person, and a person coming step into your face and saying, "Yo, I like that, I appreciated that," da 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 da. Like it tells you that okay, there is enough of something here that it's worth putting it down. And then also like I played around with just the text of some of them, like were on Instagram or whatever, and people reacted. So I think I'm a big believer. You don't want to serve people. You want to serve people good food. You don't want to just like, you know what I'm saying? Like, here's. So yeah, I really believe. But yeah, so I think those are what helped me to have the confidence or to think that okay, this might be worth, because a lot of them I'd had feedback on in person or in certain settings to think okay, there's something here. So that's and then for me, I think it's just and then in terms of and I would just say I think for me, my a lot of my influences are not actually mainly other poets. It's more of like it's more of just like life, like you mentioned earlier about how you talk about what you know. It's more about things that weigh on my mind, heavy on my mind, life, and things that come from other forms of writing, whether that's shows or novels or just the writings of the writings of just people from I don't know, Imam Ghazali to Rumi to James Baldwin to Maya Angelou, etc., etc. Of course, big part of it is lyrics, songs, etc. That's a big part of it. So it's synthesizing all that through my lens and my personality and all that, and then what comes out. So yeah, I think it's very natural, very normal to like kind of feel like, oh yeah, your first thing that you wrote was like, especially if you feel like you're not on your way to your 10,000, you're not as far, it's like not as representative of where you are now. But like we mentioned earlier, it's part of the it's like it's you never really finish stuff. You have to kind of abandon things. So that's what I think. But you were going to say something about like mediocrity I think, and things like that.
I was saying to one of my friends where I was like, oh, let's go watch Scream at the cinema, and we were like, yeah, cool. And partially like we know Scream's not going to be a great film. It's not going to be like the best film ever. But we can, you can watch films and they don't have to all be like Dark Knight trilogy, Lord of the Rings, Godfather. Like, not every film needs to do that. And I sometimes think even like with any art, don't purposely put like lazy art out there or just like art that you don't care about or just like, but this this sort of foundational belief that the art needs to be excellent for it to exist, I find that to be quite a like maladaptive thinking. It's quite a destructive way of thinking, and it actually really limits your thinking and which path that thinking can take in terms of lateral thinking. Because I find a lot of the sort of like random, like tangents that art can take you on. If every time we're thinking, let's write a poem that's going to be the best poem, or it's going to be a poem that's going to be an award-winning poem, or it's going to be a poem that, every journal is going to take in. I just think that's too much pressure to put on yourself, but also art doesn't need to do that. And I think if you're writing for that purpose, like, I think it's going to take something away from the authenticity of your art. I find this judging of art or like criticism of art to what is bad art, what is mediocre art, what is excellent art, like I find that to be such a weird, like, I'm not a fan of slam poetry. I'll watch slams, I'll go to slams maybe, but I don't like the idea of performing in slams because for some people they love the competition, they love the idea behind it, they love how it pushes them, or they'll do it for networking. But there's this thing where so much of our perception of what is great art is tied up into our politics, into our lived experience, which are all like very individualistic things. So it's, I don't know, like it's, for me, I feel like the idea of like something winning an award or being the best is very like capitalistic in nature, and it's a very like white way of thinking as well. and I think it just restricts us from like expanding. But I also think that, you know, we have grown up being told that white art is excellent and it actually being very, very mediocre. And that has really kind of changed, I guess, us being as like non-white people who write about maybe non-white things. This idea of, oh, it needs to be excellent. Like the framework that we've been taught is a very white framework. So trying to sort of disband our own internal thoughts of what is a standard of work that I'm happy with, as opposed to, do I need this to be excellent? Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it. I think it's art for art's sake is important. I will say though that I'm not a fan of slam poems, slam poetry. I don't really taken part in it. But the thing is, I might be a bit hypocrite because, like, competition is not always bad. If I look in the music and hip hop kind of era, and you know, you have like rap battles and ciphers, and you know, people love to who have the best verse on this and who have the best verse on that. So I think there is space for competition in that. But for me, we can do both. We can do multiple things, and it's not necessarily like the best. You know, this might be more of a capitalism issue, but the best rap battle is not necessarily the most, you know, beloved or most, but you will have some, you know, people that are like perceived as just kind of musicians or whatever, but who delve into battling and then they're really respected, and vice versa. Some artists who kind of cut their teeth kind of battling other people and being in competition, then they had a chance to kind of make more expressive and personal work to them, and that's been received as well. So I think there is definitely room for both. But that thing of judging, I mean, that's a whole probably other tangent and a whole other thing, just talking about the commodification of art, the commercialization of art, like how capitalism gets its hands on anything and everything, and just, you know, kind of transforms it into something that serves capitalism. And it's like, and it's just and it's trying to you know, evade the clutches of that machine and system, while, you know, artists need to eat, like, you know, they can't, exposure and like Instagram likes is not, you know, it's not enough, or people telling you that was lovely, which is amazing, people being able to resonate with your work and tell about how much it means to them. But then it's like translating that to, like, you know, being able to pay the bills and stuff. So it's a whole thing. It's a whole situation, but I think but yeah, I'm gonna what's kind of inspiring? So you talked about obviously wanting to write plays and things like that. So at the moment, what's kind of what you're excited about in terms of like to consume or also to work on with yourself, to consume, to read or to get into, and also to maybe working on yourself? Like what's
I'm trying to just get into the habit of writing daily, especially because I've got the time off. So if I'm not writing daily, I at least try and read something, and if I'm not reading something, I at least try and watch something that I think might inform my art, like little YouTube videos or something like that, or like a podcast. I quite like going to the gym and just listening to certain podcasts. I like hearing different opinions, especially stuff to do with like society, with race, capitalism, all the stuff. I'm part of like a couple of book clubs as well. In terms of what's really interesting me right now, in terms of what I'm reading, so I'm reading a book by Kaveh Akbar, and I've found there is an aspect of the way he writes that I found some familiarity with sort of what I had written, but I wanted to really push myself to sort of see what it is that I really, really like about the what I really like in his writing, and if that's something that I can sort of use to like if I can use that in some way. And the way he works with imagery and the way he picks images that are very, it's almost like, you know, connecting two different parts of the brain. And, you know, in a way that sometimes I think a lot of poets are sort of afraid to do, but also a lot of male poets struggle to do. I actually find like a lot of the poetry, a lot of the spoken word artists I used to listen to very early on were black women, because they're black American women. And there was something in there was an emotiveness in terms of what they were trying to get across. They were really focusing on the emotion of like this feeling or this relationship, and like it was like very like humanistic. And I was like, oh, I want to kind of capture that. I want to, you know, we're people creating art, and we're creating art, sharing it with other people. So how is it that people communicate to other people? And yeah, I would really recommend Kaveh Akbar. I think that's very exciting. And I've noticed since I started reading his stuff that it's kind of changed the way I write as well. And I've been sort of kind of, submitting some stuff to like various different things. I'm going to apply for a few things in terms of writing development programs. I was part of a writing development program last year, but it was a short one. And they're going to do like a year-long one this year. So that I think was really good, because I think it's important, especially again if you're self-taught, to have people that can give you an outsider's perspective, because we get so, especially when it comes to editing, it's very difficult. I think like a lot of people don't, especially with a book, like 80% of it was editing, because you know once you've gotten down your thoughts, it's like, okay, how do I get it to say what I want it to say? Because right now it doesn't say what I want it to say. It's saying some stuff, but it's not saying it in the way that I would be happy that it's put in a book. Because once it's in a book, it's in a book. You know, like how before it's in a book, you can change things. It's a relatively alive thing, which is dynamic, and you know you can tweak words. No one's ever going to notice. But once it's in the book, like it's in the book. And even now, when I look at some poems from, like if I'm performing some poems from the book, I will sometimes change certain words, because I'm just like, oh, I wouldn't use that word now to mean that thing. Yep. And that's fine to do that. I mean, it's fine to do that in a performance, but you're also limited. Yep. I mean, I guess unless you're going to, you know, like do like a second or a third print of the book, and then you can put those edits in. But yeah. And then in terms of what I'm excited with, so, you know, me and two other poets from Birmingham, Nafisa Hamid and Rupinder Kaur, we founded Gully Collective, which is sort of a Birmingham-based arts collective, which is sort of designed to sort of platform South Asian artists, and just provide like a safe space, because we just felt like there was quite a few, the spaces that we'd encountered, including publishers that we'd encountered, care wasn't really at the center of what they were doing. And also, I don't know, like I find whenever I'm working with artists, when I'm in spaces that aren't necessarily designed for you and have remnants of whiteness, it's difficult to feel like completely safe there, or feel completely like feel that your art's not going to be misconstrued, or that, you know, that performativeness of the art, like the, what is it called? I'm trying to think of what the word is. The like self-orientalizing, you know, like it's so the space itself, we came up with a zine. The zine was designed to, it was like a multidisciplinary online zine. We had poetry, photography, a play in there. We had loads of different stuff on that. You can actually access that if you go onto the Instagram page. It's there. I think it's still in the link. But that was a really fun thing to do. I'd never produced a zine before. And then we were like, oh, we want to have live events. We love live events. You know, we love the energy that are in live events. And, you know, as much as Zoom, you know, is its own thing, like it has its pros, especially like if you're doing international projects, so you want to connect to other artists internationally. But I think nothing compares to live art, live music, live poetry, you know. So, yeah, we've got that event coming up this Friday. We've got 3 great headliners. I know them all sort of personally. I mean, you know, like it's Birmingham, it's a fairly small scene. And the South Asian artists tend to know each other as well. So, we have some really good headliners. We've got some open mics, we've got some musicians coming. So I'm really looking forward to that. Like that is, I think, going to be really fun. And just like having space of joy. Like I think it's really important to have spaces of joy.
Yeah, that sounds dope. The reading, it sounds good. And I think, I'm excited to kind of be part of Writing Collective this year myself, and to to go into spaces where, you know, it's like not on it, because on one hand you have to be furiously protective of your vision of your words you're writing, but at the same time you also know that, especially if you're self-taught, and even if you're not, it's like, to grow you need feedback, you need to learn from masters, from peers, from newer people, etc. So being part of, you know, writing groups and things like that is an important part of that. So when I joined some, and we'll be joining a couple more, and I'm excited to develop in that way. So that's exciting. And then in terms of me, so I've actually been listening to so audiobooks is my way to go, because then I can multitask and things like that. So I think the last couple of ones I listened to Afterlives by Abdul Razak Gurna, and that was in terms of painting a picture and telling a story, it was incredible. And it's about the lives of these different characters in the East, somewhere in East Africa, an unnamed village in East Africa. And it's like, you know, a little bit before World War One, and the interactions with the German colonial kind of you know, regime, then some different characters and their decisions and how it impacts each other, and so on and so forth, and then a little bit through to World War II, and then through to independence. It was just some of it. You know, there's like a lot of German words in there, Swahili words, Arabic, these different characters were just it was just very beautiful, and a beautiful novel. And then I think right now I'm listening to something called Afropean. Afropean is by a Sheffield guy. I think they're mixed race black Sheffield guy, working class, and then he's kind of trying to talk about a black European identity. Is there one? What is it? How that looks like? And it's I'm really enjoying it, and it's really resonating with me. And I'd like to do something like that, or to maybe just review it, or maybe just I'm not finished it now, but just I think it's going to leave an impact on something I'm going to come back to. And so I'm just excited to like read more, and in terms of just read more and just kind of develop in that way. What we're doing with Say It With Your Chest sounds very similar to what you guys are doing with Gully. That's really cool to know that there's other people out there. And I would just kind of keep doing your thing and really support. Just keep doing your thing and keep pushing it forward, providing space for people, and all that kind of thing. One thing I did want to touch on with what we're almost going to an end is just, you know, your collection's called Mute Men. You talked about being a man in this space. Just in terms of I'm not really sure why I'm asking or I'm going, but I think there's something. There. I think for me, like, just realizing way late in life that there's something called like patriarchy and how it affects things, and then just asking. Even a friend of mine, they have a YouTube channel, a page called Misrepresented, and they were just recently asking about when does a boy become a man, when does and there's like they asked a group of girls first, and then they asked a group of guys, and it was very interesting. But it's just literally like, for me, it's like so much of there's very little kind of markers of like, you know, obviously there's the basic, you know, you're 18 or you're, you know, puberty, etc. But there's very little kind of roadmap template in. You know, we might have our own ones, like, you know, if you're religious or etc., or families, etc., and, you know, but there's very little template in terms of, you know, what if for a boy to become a man, what does it mean to be a man, all that kind of thing. And then looking at patriarchy, and then looking at different types of ideas of masculinity, healthy masculinity, etc. And then I just think, like, you know, just alhamdulillah, like, for like when I was younger, I didn't have like, and then just some of the pressures that are on people now, because like when I was younger, it was like there's a lot of even the sexualization and sexualizing ourselves and all that was coming in a little bit, but social media wasn't as crazy as it was now. And you know, in terms of, and now just young people in general, they have a lot of pressures on them now. It's like from looking at having a certain lifestyle in terms of, you know, financially doing well, etc., and then yeah, so I don't know. So I think all of that. I just think about some of the high school and some of the because that's when that's when like the pressure of feeling like not a man was really started kicking in high school, and then now growing up as an adult, as a man, you're like, oh wow, like it's just looking at different women's experiences and how much of a issue domestic violence is and gender-based violence, and it's like wow, all this was going on, and like it's just really it's not ideal really, and it's about okay, where does my role play in that? What can I do, and how have I been complicit, how have I been, etc., and then what can I kind of do going forwards, and then also as somebody who is between hope and despair, like as somebody who's like, you still want to have to believe in the good in people and that people can change. It's just it's just I don't know. I think it's just something for me. I think the main thing is I think the first step is just to understand that okay, it does mean something to be a man. It does mean something to be a woman in this society, and what are the rights, responsibilities, privileges that come with that, and how does one personally react to that. So that was a bit of a long-winded kind of thing, but I just wondered if you had any kind of thoughts on that, maybe and how it relates to maybe your your work or how you operate, how you move in these spaces.
I think this. I mean, there's been sort of articulation of like patriarchy for like generations, and even in text and stuff. But I think it's not like readily available. It's not taught in schools. I just kind of look back and weep at like just how how much we are taught in schools, and even what we're taught itself being kind of the wrong thing, but then also very useless. Like there's just so much. Like in my adult age, I look back and I just think I wish I'd learned certain things, or I wish I could devise a curriculum. And I do think it's very important for people to I mean, even like from a historical point of view, to like know what capitalism is, know what the ramifications of like World War I, World War II, or like it's taught in such a weird way. But even just like the way things like PSE are taught, is that what PSE? I don't think what did PSE stand for. It was like personal and social or education or something.
Our personal, social, citizenship.
Yeah. So it was just
education, maybe sexual education. I don't know. Personal, social, and citizenship education. I've not heard that.
But it was just very like I look back and just think, what if we'd actually
PSE,
rather than learn about Shakespeare, what if we'd learn about bell hooks? What if we'd read like feminist texts? What if we'd read like black men and women articulating this experience? What if we'd read that? And I just look back and think there's such opportunity to do that. But it just never happened. So I feel like as I've gotten older, it's more, everyone knows patriarchy exists, but they just don't necessarily have the articulation for it. They don't have the words like put down, or they don't like, there's a general feeling. There's like, and even when you talk to people about these sort of abstract ideas of what it means to be a man, like everyone has an opinion because they've been socialized to think that, like, they're products of that. And I think the hard thing is then realizing how sometimes we're taught the wrong things, or how much we've been socialized, like how much that socialization is like a core part, like a foundational belief to who you are. Like, for example, let's say like a white person, like if a lot of people won't understand what like white privilege is, or like they won't acknowledge like how white supremacy is like an idea that is just woven through everything like in this country. But like, say if there was a white person who like that sort of identity was so integral to who they were, that if people even came up to them and spoke to them about the idea of it being a privilege, or the idea of all these different things, how there'd just be a complete denial. And I find that sometimes that happens with men. Like I find that when we talk about this stuff, and especially from my community, like, and even like Muslims, I find there's such a disdain for like talks about feminism, or there's just this thing being like, oh, feminism is just this white thing that, or Islam gave us all these rights, so, we shouldn't even be talking about this kind of stuff. And I don't know, like I find that to be a bit of a tricky thing to navigate. And I guess, you can see aspects of that in the book, because part of it is like my own unlearning, my own sort of thinking one thing and then sort of thinking this other thing and then going back and thinking this other thing, and it being a journey. Like, it's not like, I believe it's not being this concrete thing that we just phase in and out of, and how we're constantly learning and how we're constantly changing, and how all these different thoughts and philosophies and the opinions and lived experiences of other people, how that can also inform how it is that we're living and why we're living this way. And I don't know, like, sorry, that sounds really abstract because you're talking about patriarchy, but I think there's a lot of confusion, and I wanted to try and get that confusion down on paper and put it in this book, because I think, and I've heard this from a lot of people who have read the book, that certain things that you talk about, they say, oh, those, I kind of thought those things, but I just didn't think about it, like, in terms, I'd never seen it on a piece of paper. And I thought that was like, I find that to be like a thing that sort of encourages me to write, because I do like the idea of like writing being this like revealing, like revelation, like a revelation of different things that, or like the best poetry, I feel like, when I go to events, I'm like, yo, this is a great poem. It's not a great poem because it's technically good. It's because it's changed something in you. Like, there's been a transformation after those 5 minutes of words, and that's a quite powerful thing.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And I think it's it's along with, I mean, there's a big gap from the world that we have and the world that we would like ideally want, and so it's about kind of like balance between living in the world that we currently have and while trying to build the world that we
it's a simultaneous thing. Like, so we can't not live in this world, but it's a gradual thing, and it's often it's also already happening. I think we sometimes just forget that a lot of people are doing the work. The work is happening, but it's just a lot of us are used to 100%. A mainstream. It takes a bit of digging. It takes a bit of searching. But the work is being done, and a lot of the time the work is actually, we are moving positively in a positive direction in certain aspects. But that positivity goes against the status quo. It goes against what the state wants you to believe. So it's not common knowledge, I would say. But I think there's room for a lot of hope, and we have to be hopeful. And even as artists, like writing about this stuff, I think it's important to be hopeful, because what is the point of us putting our writing down in a book and for it to be shared? Like, we want it to have an impact. Otherwise, we would just write this stuff and leave it in our own journal, right? Like, we'd I don't know. Like, I find there's probably other easier ways of making money, right? If we were going to do it just for fame, or there's either ways. Oh
yeah. I mean, I tell people all the time, poetry's. I tell people all the time, poetry's my get rich never scheme. Yeah. So, exactly. Yeah, probably get rich never. So it's like, please feel free to join in on this get rich slow train. So, there's plenty of room on it. So So you have to be in it for the for the love and in it for the learning and the journey. But that's and I think we'll probably end on that really. Thanks so much for taking the time. I've been, like I said, I've been kind of following your work from afar. I'm a big fan. Continue, just keep doing what you're doing, and have a lovely rest of the day. Any last
shout
thoughts?
If anyone's ever, I don't know, your viewership, if they're national or if they're based in, is it Leeds? You're based in Leeds. I want to come to Leeds.
I've never been to Leeds. Yeah. We've got. Oh, come. There's someone else. Like, we've got Leeds, an interesting place. We've got a good scenes and a lot of things like punk music, and we now have some local rap music, and that's blowing up. But poetry is. You have to be in the know, but definitely. I like to think I'm in the know, so I'll point you in the right direction. But you're more than welcome. I'll message you after this about just certain dates. But for example, like March 26th, it's a Saturday. That's kind of say it with your chest first, kind of like.
Ooh, okay.
It's like kind of a bit of like a relaunch event for us. Live. It's gonna be our first live thing. We're gonna probably have like a little bit of a.
What day of the week is March 26th?
Like either food or things like that.
You know what? Shall I come? I might come. I've got a car.
Saturday.
And I'm always thinking.
Come, bring a posse down.
I think I'll do that.
Bring some people down. But I'll message you about. But yeah, for anyone listening, just say it with your chest. SIWYCHEST. Follow that for updates. And my own Instagram, Adekola Poetry for stuff. But yeah, no, there's a monthly open mic that happens at Left Bank, which is like a really nice venue in Burley. It's not far from the city centre. The university has a few societies that do poetry. There's open mics across different places in the city. You have to know, but yeah, there's things happening, and we're hoping to kind of add and contribute to that.
Likewise, if you ever come down to Birmingham, or if any of your viewers want to know what's happening in Birmingham, or if they want to come to our events.
Yeah. In fact, somebody just messaged me today. Actually, a friend just messaged me.
Oh yeah, that's soon.
If I was coming down to the Verve Poetry thing, which is I think. Soon, so I now I'll have to. I may actually come to that. I'm going to see if I can get someone to come with me. But then, and I think I'll be down in Leicester for. There's a new artist thing happening, and I actually know a few people performing at it. And Leicester's not far from Birmingham, so I think I might pop across. But yeah, I'm hoping to. Especially I'm very passionate about promoting art and creativity outside of London, because I feel like like I mentioned early on in this chat, talent is everywhere, but
and a lot of the gatekeepers are in London.
Some people benefit from,
and I also think it's just laziness in general as well.
Because, exactly, and a lot of the money.
London's close to Parliament, and
but meanwhile, exactly, and also, it's even if you're musicians, it's been hard for like musicians outside of London, especially maybe in the rap or grime, to be taken seriously. But now they're starting to be, and I think it's same with poets and other writers or whatever. So, but like I mentioned, talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. But I'm gonna, slowly, I'm gonna try to let people get the people locally to kind of see how much talent is amongst themselves first, and if they want to go to London and kind of try their thing there, then that's dope as well. But yeah, so in different, it's not that I'm against London or anything like that, but it's just that I know where I'm coming from, so I have to rep that. I feel like I have to rep that. I want to rep that, and I feel like building something sustainable or leaving a mark where I am, then I can go into any room anywhere in the world and feel like I belong, and but cultivating and making a safe space and promoting a thing is very important to me. So yeah, and I feel like you share a similar kind of vibe. So yeah, so I'm excited to kind of see how things go. But okay, fab. All right then, Kamil. Thanks for speaking to me. Have a lovely evening. Have the rest of the day. It takes about like a couple of seconds for the recording to save, so don't log off straight away. But yeah, everybody who's listening. First one of 2022, and hope you enjoyed it. Peace and love.